And the first thing I noticed going up the hill is we started encountering a lot of bodies. I can remember, Jesus, they smelled, you couldn't tell who they were, but they were, you know, Vietnamese, North Vietnamese. Then that night was what they claimed was the worst friendly fire accident in Vietnam. And by the way, there's no such thing as friendly fire. The gates of hell opened up on us. They had at least more than two machine gun positions. I'm from here to not more than 30 meters from me, opening up on us. The only thing that saved me was the way the hill was sloped.
We're here with Mercer Vandenburg of the 173rd Airborne. A little bit of backstory on how we got here. Mercer served with my uncle Myron Beach in Vietnam. Myron did 3 tours, 2 with the Green Berets, 1 with the 173rd. He was killed in 1967, and I wanted to learn more about him, and that brought me to you. And then from that, it turned into more of a sharing stories of various veterans of the Vietnam War, because there was way too much stuff to not tell the story for. So it was really interesting just to get to talk to you the first time when we had our call, and we figured we'd take a trip down here and get to hear it from the man himself.
Well, here we are.
Here we are. So to start out, I'd love to hear a little bit about your background, where you were born and raised, and your childhood life and how all that went.
Great. Born and raised St. Louis, Missouri, actually a suburb called Clayton, Missouri. Had a interesting family background, very secure, safe family. My father was a musician with the St. Louis Symphony, no military background. My mother was a native St. Louisan, from a fairly well-to-do family. She had been married once before, and he was an interesting character. So we had a kind of a combination family, but it was a good childhood, no complaints. Not much of a military background, except for my mom's first husband. He was a Marine, and he was quite a character. He was a writer.
Tell us a little bit.
Well, I got to meet him several times and got along with him. He was actually he was an author. He was a writer. Was good friends with William Rice Burroughs. Became kind of one of the initial hippies. When Burroughs killed his wife accidentally, it was at actually his place, and my brother was there. And interesting guy.
He was there when it happened?
Yeah, and he wrote Sheena, Queen of the Jungle was one of his writings that he started. Anyway, interesting background. So I did not have a military background at all. However, at that time, and I was raised in the 50s, and World War II was still prevalent, so I became fascinated by, it was called Merrill's Marauders. One of my favorite about the war in Southeast Asia at the time. And then I had a good friend in high school, Bob Petering, who was also, he was big in the Navy side. In fact, he became a Marine and also a predecessor to a SEAL team member. But Bob and I would always hang out. We were both swimmers. I was a swimmer competitively, and Bob and I would hang out together and got involved with the military that way. Went to school at Westminster College, Fulton, Missouri. It's a land grant college, so we had to take ROTC. It was required at the time for 2 years, and then after 2 years it became optional to do it. So the first 2 years went okay. Then the junior year, when I decided to stay in the ROTC program, they actually gave you some money, and that was fine, because basically I was on a scholarship there, and like that. And then your junior year, you go to ROTC, you go to a summer camp, basically a boot camp. And for some reason, I came out with a high ranking on it. Honestly, I have no idea why, because I don't think I did anything more or different than anyone else, but it came very high ranking. And I thought, hey, I'm good at this. So I stayed in the program and decided.
What were some of the things involved in the ROTC program?
Well, it's a regular boot camp sort of thing. It was at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, a very hot, dusty, kind of miserable area. But in retrospect, compared to Vietnam, it was like a country club. And it was neat because you had all the different students from all the different colleges there, and I made a lot of friends with people from all over that were involved, and a guy named Bob Darris, who was from New Orleans. He was kind of a party guy, and we got along quite well. And so, I enjoyed the program. To be quite honest, I thought it was kind of fun. A lot of people were bitching about it because of the heat and how miserable everyone was. I thought it was kind of fun.
And mostly physical stuff?
Oh yeah, a lot of physical, and not as much as I was going to learn about, but.
And this was nowhere near the intensity level of actual boot camp?
No.
Got it.
They put us through everything.
Right.
It was okay, but it was a good program, I think.
And that was a requirement?
Yes. Well, if you wanted to go after in your junior year. And I did well, and there were two of us that were very high ranked in the program. So my senior year, I was at what they call battalion level grade, and enjoyed it. Part of the thing I enjoyed was there's a military honor society called Scabbard and Blade. Ours was more of a drinking club. Compared to some of those, I remember running into other Scabbard and Blade people that said, "Oh, did you march?" I go, "What?" I said, "No, we went to the tap room, had our meetings."
So that was more. So the end of that was more of a party school.
Kind of. And I've said the ROTC program wasn't that great. It was fine compared to meeting people from West Point. We were nowhere nearly as well trained or educated in terms of military things, but they were good people.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's how I got into it, and as we evaluated, what do you want to do in the military? I thought about it. The only thing I've ever known about was the infantry. So I said, I really didn't have interest in going to the Finance Corps or to Ordnance Corps or Transportation Corps. I said, no, I'm going to do the combat arms. And of the three combat arms, armor, infantry, and artillery, the infantry was the only one that I ever knew about. And so I said, yeah, I'm going to do that. And all my fraternity brothers thought I was crazy.
Now, was the war going on at this time?
Starting, yes. So we were very much aware of it.
What year?
I graduated 66, so 64, 65. That's when the troops started going in. And I do remember reading quite a few articles about it.
So this was already happening, and it was well known at that time. Got it.
Yeah, and also the other reason I stayed in is that's when the draft started picking up. And I said, well, if you don't do it, you're going to get drafted. So you might as well stay in it. So
it was almost a no choice. Like you knew eventually you were going to.
I knew eventually I was going to end up there, so why not, do the program?
Yeah, okay. So you went directly from college to OCS?
Yeah. I graduated June 6th that year. I had 1 week to report to Fort Carson, Colorado. So I went to Fort Carson, Colorado. They immediately turned me around and said, your unit's doing instruction of ROTC cadets in Indiantown Gap, Pennsylvania. I said, oh, okay. So turned around, drove to Indiantown Gap, Pennsylvania, where I was an instructor in small unit ambush techniques, which was kind of interesting because the people I was teaching were basically ROTC students that I was several months earlier. But it was interesting, but I did learn a lot about small unit ambush, and I was actually enjoyed that quite a bit. In the program there, I met some guys that, excuse me, that were good. So I was happy with that.
Did you feel like you were well prepared?
Yes and no. My first duty station then was Fort Carson. After that, we went back to Colorado Springs and the commanding general there at the time was a man by the name of Autry J. Maroon, who, to be quite candidly, was the biggest asshole you'd ever want to meet. It was, oh God, it was horrible. It almost convinced me not to become a career officer. His reputation was that he was an asshole. Excuse me, and nobody liked him.
You're good.
And the battalion commander I worked with was good, and then there was a major there that kind of took me under wing, and it went well. We did primarily training. It was a training group because at that time there was a lot of buildup for Vietnam. So it was the 5th Mech, and we're doing a lot of training. It was mostly training cadets, even though it was a mechanized division. We did some mechanized work, but not much. Most of it was just training young troops. Now, as a regular Army officer, I knew that I was either going to go to Airborne School and Ranger School, and everyone wanted to go to Airborne, so I had done that. So I had gone to Fort Benning, Georgia, and went through the Airborne program, which I liked. Couldn't get into the Ranger program. Ironically, you would think they would, but there were so many people going through the program at the time that they said you either do Airborne or Ranger, you can't do both. Because you're a regular Army officer and your training at Fort Benning is going to be just as good as any Ranger training you're going to get. So I didn't get into the Ranger program.
Now, did any of your officers at the time during your training have combat experience?
Yes. I had one of my training, one of my sergeants was, I can't remember what unit he was with, but one of my squad leaders had come from the 173rd Airborne. He was good. And so yes, quite a few of them. They used to joke around with me, you know, just when you go over there, just stick your arm out and get a shot. You won't like it. I said, thanks, Sarge.
So they prepared you as well as possible for the time, because that was before you had a lot of guys coming back from the jungle with experience.
Right. The other thing we did before I went overseas is I went to the Jungle Warfare Training Center down in Panama, the Canal Zone. Really tough program. They had an escape and evasion course there that was as tough as anything you're going to go through.
And what was that like?
If they caught you on your escape and evasion, they did torture you. In fact, I had a friend who they basically ended up going in the hospital. They would wrap your legs around a pole and then jump on your knees, and then they strapped him on a Jeep, tied him down, and he got sunburned, and that's why he ended up in the hospital. So it was pretty tough training, and biggest thing about Panama was the weather. It was just absolutely awful. It was the most humid place I've ever been into in my life. To this day, it's like I can remember not being able to breathe the humidity. You do get customized to it, though, and that really helped me for Vietnam, to be quite honest. So that probably was the best thing in preparation for Vietnam that I had.
So climate-wise, you were pretty well.
Yeah, and also it was physically demanding. You know, people nowadays will say, "Hey, do you want to go do this?" You know, slide. You know, what do they call them? Ropes. You know, the slide.
Zip lines.
Yeah, zip lines. I go, why? I did a zip line over piranha-infested waters, hanging onto a rope.
Little bit more at stake there.
I got stung by scorpions there, giant ants. I was physically lost a lot of weight. So by the time I got to Vietnam, I was pretty well acclimatized. So ended up going to Vietnam.
Is the wildlife, was that similar where you were in the training versus?
Yes and no. Panama was, maybe it was, now that I think about it. I hadn't thought about it. It was hotter than Vietnam. People always say, in Vietnam, were you hot? And the answer is no, I was cold more than I was hot. Because during a lot of the rainy season, the temperature would drop at night, and you're wet and you're damp and temperature dropping, mid 60s, it's like, holy, you'd really be cold. So,
And then
didn't like it.
How long after that did you get deployed to Vietnam?
Okay, within 1 year of joining the service, they sent me overseas, and I went over unassigned. That is, I wasn't initially assigned to the 173rd. A lot of people put in certain requests for certain units. I said, I'll just, had no idea where they're going to end up. So I was very happy to hear that I was going to the 173rd once they came with that.
So was every unit on rotation to go to Vietnam at the time? As far as the 82nd and all those guys were?
Of the 173rd, initially when they went overseas and they went over to 65, they were one of the first Army units over there. They had been stationed in Okinawa. And there were 2 battalions of the infantry. There was 2 battalions, the 1st and 2nd battalions. The next battalion that went over was mine, was the 4th. It actually came out of the 101st Airborne. And then while I was there, we added another battalion, and that had come out of the 82nd. So our unit initially had been 101st, that they converted to the 4th Battalion. So that's how the unit, and they went over in 66, so when I got there, they were just starting their first rotation of troops in for the second one.
So you guys were fresh?
Yes.
Just about everybody?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There were some experienced troopers, but not that many. Very few people you run into really had any combat experience.
So when did
Just
you
very few.
arrive in country?
June 8th, 1967, exactly. And then you spend about a week during orientation, basically acclimatizing, but more importantly, we operated, at the time we were posted in near Saigon, but it was, I'm having a senior moment here, Benoit, which was the main airfield, and that's why the herd had gone in, the 107th herd, was to protect the airfield. So it was pretty well established property, and there really wasn't much activity, even though we could go out on patrols in that area, and technically, yes, you could run into things, but we didn't. But what you learned were the call signs, you learned, the procedures, because every unit has a different procedure, different, acronyms that you use for, like, a medic we always refer to as the hotel, and you learned all the different call signs and just operating procedures that each of the units would do. So you would do that, and we always doubled up on sizes because of that I went in exactly 1 year after graduation. So did all the other people that were basically West Point had graduated June 8th. So when I went over, I was basically with about a half dozen West Point graduates who I got to know pretty well.
Got it. So
Most of whom were killed, though. But
so your first week in country
was
then
orientation week.
Orientation. So who carried out the orientation? Was that office?
Yeah, there was
there?
the brigade, and they had pretty good established training programs.
What was it?
We did actually, they had a jump tower to jump from, a lot of rifle range practice, a lot of, then we'd go out on patrols and get used to everything. And once you got acclimatized, then they assigned you to your different unit, to the different battalions.
Okay.
Which I did.
So after your first week, where did they send you?
Said, you're going to the 4th Battalion. Said, okay. They were operating, they were in the Pleiku region, in the Kantum province. And when I got there, I was reporting to, at the time, the battalion commander was a Colonel Jackley. And he said, you're going to be going to Alpha Company, A Company, which is then commanded by Captain Phillips, who would eventually retire as a colonel. And he was a good reputation. So Captain Phillips says, I meet him, and he immediately told me I was going to be go first platoon, that the acting platoon leader at the time was Sergeant Myron Beach. And he said, he's been the acting platoon leader. We needed a lieutenant. That's going to be you. Good luck. And off I went. Now, I heard immediately that I was the luckiest lieutenant in the group because that Beach was really an experienced soldier. He had had 2 tours with Special Forces, and he had been with the herd, and he was extremely well thought of and well liked. Hearing this, I thought, okay, I'm a dumb lieutenant. I don't know what I'm doing. I said, I'm not going to come in and be a smart ass. I'm going to sit down with Sergeant Beach, introduce myself, kind of get everything I can from him. Learn about the men, the troops, the procedures, and I figured if he's experienced, he really helped me out. So I go and I report to Sergeant Beach, or I got up there, and I said, hello, Sergeant. He looks at me, he goes, Lieutenant, damn, am I glad to see you. He said, I want to get the hell out of here. I said, what? He goes, oh yeah, you lead from the front. I'm going to the back. And I said, anything else? He goes, oh? He goes, oh yeah. He says, see here, I got me a mighty fine D-handle shovel. And sure enough, he had a D-handle shovel. And he was leaning on it. I go, yeah? He says, that's a mighty fine shovel. He says, if the men give you any trouble, let me know. Because me and my D-handle shovel will make sure they don't give you any more trouble. And off he went. And I thought about that for a while. I go, damn, I didn't learn anything. But then what I, in retrospect, learned was he wasn't going to be there to say, I want to check you out, Lieutenant. He's just assuming you're going to do a good job. And that gave me more confidence than anything else.
So he trusted you?
Yeah. He said, no, you're airborne, you're good. I know that. I don't worry about you.
Wow.
And because other places, oh, check this lieutenant out, don't trust him and all that. No, Beach didn't. He said, no, you're good.
And you were taking over for him at that point?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I had a lot of respect. The radio telephone operator, Tom Walker, he had absolutely adored Sergeant Beach. He immediately, wasn't skeptical of me because he just trusted everything that Sergeant Beach had done. So that's how I got to introduce.
What was he like?
Actually, very easygoing unless he got mad at you. He was absolutely tough on the men, and they respected him. He was an old timer. He was a cigar chewing. He used to complain that we do search and destroy. He says, "Oh, we're not destroying enough." He really, he said in Korea we'd always burn things down. And he carried with him a little hand pistol that he did, and he was fearless. I wasn't there at the time, but right before that, he had an operation that they had made some contact, and he had jumped into. He had thrown a grenade and had basically killed some locals at that time it was Viet Cong, and he jumped in the bunker with them to finish them off, and his weapon jammed. And he said, "Well, that's awful." He said, sitting there with my rifle in this guy's face, and it doesn't fire. But he said the guy was pretty well gone, so he wasn't worried about it. But it's like, oh man.
So he seemed like the type, just from your first impression, that just wasn't afraid of anything.
He was just, yes, he was good. The thing I remember most about him, first of all, he got me, he says, "Oh yeah, you're young looking." He said, "Start smoking these cigars with me." He said, "That'll make you look older." I said, "Okay, I'll try it." "I can't do it, Sergeant Beach." He said, "Well, that's okay, just chew on them." So I started chewing on a cigar. And that worked, And then when we get what we call goodie boxes, they drop in all these things. First thing we ever did, he says, "Okay, Beach gets all the, you pick out the cigars you want. Those are yours. Then the cigarettes will go to the men. I don't care what you get." And he said, "Okay, I got the good cigars." Always had a cigar in his mouth, always.
Really?
Oh yeah.
No matter what?
No matter what. It wasn't always lit, but he always had it in his mouth.
So did he teach you a lot when you first got there, did it seem like he was trying to take you under his wing at all?
Not really. No, he just assumed I could do a good job. I will tell you one of my stories. They put me on point. My platoon was on point, and we were up. This is after we had gone to Docto, and the terrain was just awful. And I get to the spot, and I'm on point, and and it's just a wall of vegetation. And I had my best point man was a guy named Sergeant Richard Abner. He was a good point man, not because he saw that much, he was strong. He could use a machete and hack his way through. So we're waiting for Abner to hack this way through, and I get a radio message from Captain Phillips saying, okay, he said, give me your point of reference. He wants to know which direction, what do you see? And I'm looking and I see nothing. Absolutely nothing but a wall of green. So what am I going to tell him? I don't know what to do. I don't see anything. So Beach comes up. He said, hey, what's going on, Lieutenant? I said, I don't know. What am I going to say? He says, He goes, I'll tell you what. He goes, just take 2 salt tablets and drive on. And that was his comment was, don't worry about it, just drive on. And so, okay, I took 2 salt tablets and drove on. And to this day, whenever I run into things like, what do you do? I have no idea, just, screw it, take 2 salt tablets, just drive on.
There you go.
And that's what you do.
So when you arrived in country, give us a little bit of a walkthrough as to what the terrain was like, how the climate was, what was around you. Was it jungle? Was it mountainous?
Very heavy. Okay, initially operation was in Kantum province, and it was very hilly, a lot of thick vegetation. And then when we went to Docto, it got worse. Very mountainous. There were some hills so steep that we actually used rappelling ropes to go up and down. And the big thing that you have to remember is the weight we carried on our backs. Typically, I didn't carry as much weight as some of my men. All my men carried at least 400 rounds of ammunition. Then you would carry additional, maybe claymore mines. I carried about 300 rounds, but then I always had my maps, at least 2 or 3 smoke grenades, a couple fragmentation grenades, at least a gallon and a gallon and a half of water, which put weight, and then all your clothes, which the other men would carry, everyone had to carry at least 10 burlap bags, because we bunkered in every night. We had dug positions. Well, the burlap bags were pretty light until you dump them the next day and they're still full of mud. So that weight would pick up. So the average weight was at least 60 to 70 pounds that people were carrying.
So you guys were bringing a lot of ammo.
Oh, yeah.
So you were prepared for extended engagements.
Not only that, not me, but like our machine gun team, everyone had to carry, in addition to their own weapons, about 400 rounds of machine gun ammo. And even occasionally, I would carry, if someone got hurt, we had our weapons platoon, we didn't do 81 millimeter mortars, we had 60s because they were a little bit lighter, but I would carry, you carry 1 or 2 rounds on you. So yeah, I would say my pack was lighter, but not by much.
So walk me through a day in country.
Okay.
Shortly after you got there.
Okay.
What are you doing in the morning to the evening?
Every day is pretty much the same. After we chopper in first on an operation.
So you're always coming in by a helicopter?
Coming in. Now you try to get in early enough, because wherever you land, you don't want to stay, okay? Because there's an open area where you can land. And so you usually have a designation, a hill X meters away, depending on what time you land. So you land, you wait till all the men are there, check it out, send out a patrol, and then you start your movement. And you basically move all day, but you always try to stop almost I'll say late afternoon, mid to late afternoon, because you don't want it to be dark. Because we're going to bunker in, we have to dig in positions every night, and that's going to take a good hour or 2. And as you dig them in, as an officer, I had to make sure the firing positions if it's black, you can't tell. So no, you want to be dug in early enough to dig in. The reality is that never happened. It was always dark. So you want to know a typical day? We'd start, let's say, after the next day in operation. We always operated an hour before sunlight. I'd have to be awake, and Sergeant Beach would have to be awake. Okay, because we do within by sun morning, we'd have what we call stand to, where everyone's alert. So we're all alert, and even though the theory was that's when you're going to be attacked if you're going to get hit, which never really happened. But what most people did was get their breakfast, get their gear together, break camp, and get ready to move. As soon as it was fully light, about 7, you're moving, and you move all day to whatever wherever they say you're going to, whatever next hillside is. And you move slowly. You always say, "Oh, we should be well conditioned to run and all this crap." No, you move slowly, because you're not if you move too fast, you don't know what you're going to run into, and 2, you just really got to be aware of all your surroundings. In fact, the only thing that really bothered me a lot was how they want us to get to exposition by a certain time, when we had heard that, like, the Koreans didn't do that. They'd go from point A to point B, but then they'd return and go back and forth, and then that's when they'd make contact, because you're getting, the North Vietnamese would be trailing you. I mean, you couldn't see them, but they were in the area. And that's the other thing about the terrain, how thick it was. I told this one story, I'll tell it again, is we were supposed to logger in at another site and meet up with Company B, another company. So we said, okay, here are the coordinates, let's get there. So we get that location. Damn, where's Company B? We can't find them. And we check, what's going on. The company reports they're there. We're not here. Said, shit, we got the wrong location. Somebody's got the wrong coordinates. We didn't. They were as close from me to that fence. Couldn't see them. Couldn't hear them. A whole company of men that close. That's how thick the terrain was.
And this is all like trees?
Yeah, bush, yes. The mountains had very large trees. It was what they call triple canopy, with things over other things, and it was just dark. But you did get some open areas too. But the main thing was how hilly it was. I mean, I always thought, man, we don't want to make contact when you're on a hillside. You can't move. You're trapped.
Now, did you know or have an idea as to what the enemy strength was when you got there?
No.
So they were just kind of figuring that out as
Well,
they
they
went.
say that they knew. Well, they had like people. They could had airplanes. They could come in and they could sense, like, sniff that humans have been there, and I guess in retrospect they find out what. I mean, I know now. What unit, like the first contact where Sergeant Beach was killed was the KD 101 Battalion of the 24th NVA division. But we'd hear there'd be, I think there were 6,000 NVA in the area. We had heard at the time 30,000.
And that's not including not regular uniformed troops like Viet Cong. That's just
No, right.
NVA.
In the mountains, the only thing we ever encountered was North Vietnamese regulars.
So
in Tuiwa, we would encounter a lot of locals. I hate to say they were easier to kill, but they were.
So, talk me through some of those encounters with the locals first.
Okay, down in Tuiwa, I remember one of the first operations, and we came in. It was a fairly low area, and there were some rice paddies, but there was some flat land, and there was a village kind of about 1,000 meters away. And as we're going, we come across a bunker. I go, damn, okay. So what are you going to do? No one wants to really go in there. So I said, well, what you want to do is throw smoke grenades into it. Why? Because at the smoke grenades, if there is a traveling bunker, you want to see where the smoke, if there's an exit route, that smoke's going to come up. So we've tossed about 3 or 4 smoke grenades in there and nothing. I said, okay, we started throwing in some regular grenades, and the blast came right back at us. So shit. So we knew that it didn't go anywhere. So I said, okay, let's go on. And then we started catching some sniper fire at us. So I'd get the men on line. We're going to direct some fire in on them. And all of a sudden, right behind me, our 2 NVA sergeant and another one, and they had been in the bunker. And the grenades didn't kill them. What happened was the smoke was so bad they couldn't breathe. So they came crawling out to surrender. And they could have killed me. What they were was we had caught them. They were going up in the mountain. They had malaria. So they were leaving the low areas, going up to an area up in the mountains where they could get medical treatment. And we had caught them, and they saw us come in, and they jumped into the bunkers.
So did you capture those guys?
Oh yeah,
Probably
got
scared
them.
you, huh?
I felt sorry for them because we turned them over to the local PLF, and they.
And what those guys were against the North Vietnamese?
Yes, the local police, and we could tell that these guys weren't going to make it very far.
Right.
It was just tough. The other thing about 2 we did we knocked off a squad of locals on a riverbank. So that was probably, I shouldn't say they're easier to kill than North Vietnamese. That's kind of not a way of doing it, but it was more of a small local contact.
What happened?
And it was more frequent. In the mountains, you never saw anything until they were going to kill you. Just very rare, but in 2 I know we made contact.
What happened with the riverbed guys?
Huh?
What happened with the squad at the riverbed?
Oh, they were dumb enough to throw grenades at us, so we got them, and they were in bunkers, and we killed them all.
And that was your first contact with
No,
the enemy?
no, actually that was, Tuiwa was after my first contact on 8/30.
So walk me through the day of your first contact,
Okay.
how that went.
First of all, someone said, I once said that was our first contact, which major contact I had. Did have some snipers shoot at me a couple of times. It wasn't bad. You hear the zip of rounds.
And you can't see the enemy when this is happening.
No. So on Hill 830, and this is where Sergeant Beach was killed.
Yeah.
We had formed our 2nd Battalion in June, after a couple of weeks after I was there, lost a company. Well, out of, a company should be 150 men. I think they probably had 120 or something like that. They took 76 killed. 2 of the platoons were completely wiped out, called the Battle of the Slopes. And I knew both platoon leaders very well, so that really got to me. So when we went up to Dak To, we said, we're not going to go in small company operations. You always do multiple companies. Now, you might not operate together, okay, but you want to be within an hour's reach of each other in case someone makes contact. So we were, and they did a joint operation. We had a major come in to head it up. So it was Bravo company and then our company, and we had done the line of march. And uneventful day, just crappy weather. And Colonel Jackley says, oh, you're stopping too soon. He said, I want you to get up to Hill 830 instead, which is another hill up. So we reversed position, so I became the point. So we're on point when we went up the hill. And it was kind of normal terrain. It wasn't horribly steep or anything. It was, but it was a light, kind of a light rain. And we would see indications of people, but not fresh. And all of a sudden, I get a call from my point that we got, some markings here, people. So I go up and, holy cow, this is wet footprints. This is not someone who was here a week ago. This is someone who's been here really recently. So I said, okay, be careful. They move up about 15, 20 meters in front of me. And all of a sudden I hear rip, rip, rip. We hear some firing coming. It's on my right flank. So we hit the ground, okay. Who is it? Who is it? We don't know. And Captain Phillips calls me, what are you firing for? I go, it's not me firing. And then all of a sudden, the gates of hell opened up on us. They had at least more than two machine gun positions. I'm from here to not more than 30 meters from me, opening up on us. The only thing that saved me was the way the hill was sloped. There was kind of like a slight dip. The ones to my left, a lot of those guys got hit because it was a little bit smoother. And that's when Sergeant Beach got killed. He was coming up. He was behind me because it was the trailing, so he was said, let's move the men on line, and they were trying to move up when they opened up on us, and they hit us with everything. Mortars, rockets, ones that really caused a lot of damage were people in trees. They're right above us shooting us. And it was horrendous. Couldn't hear a thing. People, it's like, holy shit. I tried to yell commands, I couldn't hear anything. Any man that was above a low crawl position got hit. The fire was just right there cutting down all the vegetation around you. You just kind of bury yourself in the ground. And then it's ironic because there's so much noise you can't do anything, but then it stops. Why? Because everyone's kind of either reloading or trying to figure out where's it coming from. The enemy's doing the same thing. Where are you? So all of a sudden it's just dead quiet. And then all of a sudden, starts the rip, rip, rip of automatic fire starts up again and just gets to you. I caught some shrapnel. I don't know. I think maybe it was a AK-47 round that splintered, but it could have been a grenade or even a mortar round. Most of the mortar fire that was causing damage was not on my troops because we were so close to the enemy lines that it was the rounds were hitting behind us. So we were catching more of the weapons fire as opposed to the mortar rounds.
So you could hear how close it was, but you
oh
couldn't
Lord,
see
yeah,
anybody.
yeah. Well, you could see movement, and then we did knock a couple of them out of the trees, and they were not far away. Let's put it this way: I could throw a grenade at them, and close enough, laying on the ground. The scariest thing was I often hear this crack by my ear. I thought Walker had fired his. I was laying down. He's my RTO, so he's kind of on my right hip. Right hip. I thought he was firing over me. I said, "God damn, Walker, don't fire your weapon!" And I looked at him. He'd caught a round. Had gone by my ear. Had hit him in the helmet. Had split the helmet open, like it had been hit with an axe. And he was just staring at me. His eyes were big as quarters. Just holy shit. I go, Walker, get your fucking head down. And he was just, oh my God, he got shot right, basically between the eyes, but only didn't kill him. He was fine. Gave him a headache.
So, how long was this firefight?
It actually lasted more than a few hours. The first few minutes were the toughest. There wasn't always a saying that if you're a lieutenant in an ambush, you got 2 minutes to live. And I got hit within 2 minutes. Damn, they're right.
So as soon as it started, the shooting started, you hit the ground.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And then what was going through your mind? What was happening?
Why
Just stay here?
Why in the hell didn't I go to graduate school? No, I tell you what thing did come to mind. In Benning, when you're, in the training, they always would say, after you make contact, pull back, because we're going to get air and artillery on them for you. Okay, you just go in and you clean up the body. You do the body count. You know, you don't have to worry. You make contact. Well, what you find out is you're the bait for the artillery fire. You know, nothing good happens to the bait. I don't care if it's big or small contact. Bait loses. So they say, don't worry about contact. We've got the superior firepower. We're going to overwhelm them. So I'm waiting for this overwhelming fire, and I'm sitting there thinking, shit, it's all coming at me. And I mean, it was just coming at us right and left. And what's going on? And because finally we got one of my machine guns got knocked out, but the other one we got it going pretty well. So we were able to return a lot of rifle fire. I was very proud of our men, because you're so scared you just lay there. You're frozen. And then it takes a while to say, okay, we better do something. But what the biggest problem was terrain was so thick. They said, well, we'll get some gunships in for you. Well, they couldn't find us. I mean, they could find us, we couldn't, you know, you pop a smoke, it didn't go anywhere. All it does is give away your position. So then they said, oh, we're going to get air on them. Well, that never happened either. The TAC Air, the guy that was attached, calling it airstrikes, was killed. So we didn't have any chopper or air support at all. We just fought with, you know, machine guns and M16s. And it lasted a good 3 to 4 hours.
And did you lose a lot of guys that day?
Yeah. Well, we took 25 killed out of, and 60 wounded. So most of the killed were actually Bravo Company, because they were behind me, and they were ones that caught all the mortar fire. We lost Beach, but I also lost my machine gunner, who was probably one of the finest men I've ever known. He was he won the Distinguished Service Cross.
What happened with that?
Name's John Borowski from Chicago, and he was over on my right. And all of a sudden I hear him bitching because the first rounds that came in actually hit his weapon and made it inoperable. He had also gotten hit in the head. And I look at him, Borowski, goddamn Borowski, you know. And he says, look at this. He goes, I'm Polish, don't they know? They can't shoot me in the head and kill me? I said, oh, you're kidding me. So I gave him my M16. I took his 45. And he moved up the hill and he was doing firing, and he was basically, a couple of things he did. He got the extra barrel of his machine gun over to the other machine gun team, so they could use, because we burned it up. When we were firing so much, we were just burning up the barrels. And then he came back and he went towards, charging, going towards the enemy bunkers, and he got shot through the throat. And he was killed. So
were they prepared for you to come through that section of jungle?
We ended up afterwards, and I got wounded, so I was in the hospital for a while, which I didn't think I was going to. I thought to me, it was a very small wound. And I said, I'm not even going to go out of the field. And they said, oh, go on out, have them check it out. Well, it turned out it did go through my chest wall, and they cleaned it out. So what I thought was I was only going to be out for a day, I was out for a week, because they butterfly the wound open so it doesn't get infected. But I did hear they had over 45 bunkers that were connecting bunkers on the hill. So when we made contact, the first fire I got was from the right. I think we were so close to their positions. In fact, I know we were close because the first grenade we threw, we blew up. We got somebody, but we were showering shit. We hit their latrines. And the Vietnamese, unlike us, we'd go out in front of our lines, defecate and stuff. they always did theirs behind their lines. So when we did that, we knew that we was amongst them. So I think the first fire that hit us from on the right was their listening post, that we had gotten by them. And all of a sudden they realized there was someone there, so they opened up, and their firing was more directed to tell the main encampment that we're there. And that's when they opened up on us, because all of a sudden that alerted them. Because the first few 5 minutes were nothing but, brief fire on my right flank, and then all of a sudden, whoosh, we got whacked from the front.
Wow. And this was how long prior to Hill 875? This is a big gap.
Yes, July 10th.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. What happened is, that was the rainy season. So then after that, we operated, didn't run into squat. And they probably had pulled back across the borders. So they said, okay, we're sending you down to Tuiwa. But our 2nd Battalion had stayed up in the Dak To area. And then when they started making contact again, early fall, after the dry season hit, that's when we went back to Dak To.
So from the day that Myron was killed,
yes,
to Hill 875, you really didn't have any contact with the enemy? And
other than at Tuiwa.
Gotcha, okay.
Yeah, at Tuiwa we did, but not in Dak To.
And did they bring you back to Dak To specifically because of the contact?
Of all the contact.
Got it.
Yeah, I had gotten malaria in Tuiwa, so I had not been, and then they had started making contact very early, end of October, early November. And so, I knew, I was reading about when I was in the hospital that they had made some really early contact. So I can remember getting a letter from my parents saying, oh, we're so happy you're not at Dak To anymore, because we're hearing how bad it is. And I got the letter as I was going back up there. So, and when I got back up there, it was completely different from in July. July was just that thick terrain and stuff, and we wouldn't see any sign of life. In November, when we started, before we hit the hill, lots of signs of life. We would find trails, and then some of the trails where this thick terrain was, they had carved out stairways. That's how they can maneuver, and they had put, pathways and stairways that they could move through those hills that could take forever to get through, just like lightning. They had really done a lot of work when we weren't there. And we'd find equipment. I can remember finding North Vietnamese equipment that was still packed in. People say, oh, they didn't have the weapons. They had radio communications. They had the weapons. They had everything they needed.
A lot of Chinese equipment, right?
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, and they weren't shy. People say, "Oh, you had to fire so many rounds for every one you killed." The answer is, yeah, so did they. They didn't squander anything. Trust me. They opened up. They used everything they could too.
So, when Myron was killed,
yes,
he was considered. Was he like somebody you looked up to, or an inspiration to you prior to?
Yes. I'll tell you one thing, and I've not told this to anyone. After he was hit, I knew he was hit, but I didn't know how bad. I heard it was bad, but I had no idea, what was going on. So I had the opportunity to go back down the line after we had pulled back to see him, and he looked not in good shape. I could tell he was in bad shape. And so I come up, just to see how he's doing. And he looks at me, and he goes, "Hey, Lieutenant." I was stunned. He said, "You don't need me." He says, "You're good. You don't need me. You're good. You'll be fine without me." I said, "Don't say that. Don't say that." No, he says, "You're good." So it gave me the confidence that I was good. Because I sure as hell didn't think that at the time. But for him to say, the more I thought about it, I go, my God, here's a man who I'm supposed to be comforting, and just the opposite. He comforted me. Now, I was not with him when he passed away. I had gone back up. Tom Walker was with him. Tom was the one that told me that he had finally passed away.
How did the men take that?
It was harsh. That night was just absolutely one of the worst nights of my life. Because we had pulled back and we had an awful lot of injured people. And the worst was there was some guy who had been obviously hit, and he was calling for his mother. And it was not just a cry, it was like a small child calling, mommy, 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 help me, help me. And it just went on forever, and then it just stopped, and you knew he died. And that was like, I can still remember hearing that. That was the worst. And the rain was still coming down, and there were people moaning and crying all over.
Including the NBA?
Well, no, who knows what happened to them. Yeah. They were gone the next morning.
Wow.
I'll tell you one thing that shows you how tough some of them were. We only found a handful of bodies, which is typical. But we did take one prisoner, okay? And he had had his foot shot off. And so, you know, they knew they couldn't move him, so he had lost a foot. And so they're taking him prisoner, and they had him walk on that stump down the hill, and he did it without stoic. And holy shit, it's impressive. Yeah, yeah, he is a tough son of a bitch. Oh shit.
So was there anything that you specifically would do after a loss like that, after a loss like Myron, for your guys?
No, Captain Phillips did.
Yeah.
He had to do all the letters. Mm-hmm. We lost another lieutenant, Danny Jordan was killed, and Danny Jordan's father was just really beside himself. He wanted to know all the detail, and poor Captain Phillips just trying. Well, you're out in the field writing this stuff, and he was very good about that. I unfortunately, maybe I was just young and stupid, but I.
What about for morale for the guys? Was there anything that you told them?
Hard to say, because I was out of the field. When I came back, they were really happy to see me and felt really good.
Did you get any replacements in between then and?
Not many.
Gotcha. And walk me through, they brought you back to Docteau.
Yep.
How did the lead up to Hill 875 happen?
Well, that's when I got back, that's when we knew that a lot more contact. Our battalion had made contact a couple times. First battalion had taken quite a few casualties. Warren had been on one operation that had was pretty good. In fact, it was interesting. After Sergeant Beach, my sergeant, I went through a couple of them, weren't very good. Ended up with a guy named Sergeant David Terrasas. Tough SOB, okay. Unlike Sergeant Beach, who was pure military, Terrasas was trouble. He'd been kicked out of Special Forces. He was something else. But he was good, okay. But I remember on 875, we were getting hit, mortared, and we're all hunkered down. There's Terrasas. He goes, "Hey, Lieutenant," he said, "I'm too mean to get killed." I said, "Son of a bitch." "No, you're not. Get down." I mean, he would talk about things he would do that before the service, how he drowned a couple of people. I mean, he was crazy. But
organized crime guy?
No, who knows?
Just crazy.
I mean, You couldn't believe half of what he said.
Yeah.
But a lot of it you could. Oh yeah.
So walk us through that day. What did you
Okay.
know? What did you know going into it? Did they brief you on the hill?
Okay, we were out in operation, okay? And then the 2nd Battalion had been on the hill and they had gotten hit. And we knew immediately that we heard it. It's bad. It's really bad. So we didn't know. So we all choppered in to it was Fire Base 16.
You could hear it from.
No, couldn't hear it.
How
But we
far
got
away?
to Fire Base 16, okay? We loaded up immediately. They said, start moving up the hill. We knew they had made contact because I forgot who it was at Fire Base 16. So a guy from 2nd Battalion who was there said, hey, it's bad shit up there, man. Be careful. So I said, okay. So we're going up the hill. And the first thing I noticed going up the hill is we started encountering a lot of bodies. Okay, I can remember, Jesus, they smelled, we couldn't tell who they were, but they were, Vietnamese, North Vietnamese. And then we kept going up, and I can remember specifically one North Vietnamese had his legs blown off, and he had all this really nice equipment. That's right, good radio equipment, everything. You could see the communication wires, everything going up. Like, shit, this is really good, And we tried to do very brief breaks, but keep moving. And as it started to get dark, we caught some rocket fire. Oh crap, they're still here. We were hoping maybe they're gone. And then the terrain went terrible, but we encountered a lot of bunkers. Like, holy crap, these bunkers. I mean, they were really heavy logs, really tunnel. You could see well prepared. And this was not even on the hill. This was on other things.
So this was between
Yeah.
you guys and the guys you were trying to go get.
Get to.
So give us a little bit of a backstory, just for the viewers at home that don't
Okay.
know. What was going on before you got there?
Okay, the 2nd Battalion had gone up on the 19th. We were told that, take the hill, that there's indications of some enemy up there. What they didn't know is how many and how the complex was extremely well connected. Okay. And the 2nd Battalion went up with 3 companies. Now, when you hear about a battalion, you're thinking about 800 men. They had under 300 going up the hill. When we went up, we had under 300. So there weren't more than 700 people total on the whole hill, even though it's supposed to be 2 full battalions. So anyway, the 2nd Battalion went up, and they had C and A was the trailing company, and C was on the left, I know, and I think it was probably B. They're going up the hill, and they got hit and they got pinned down. So they tried to form their perimeter, but they had also been pretty spread out. And that's when you hear about Carlos Lozada. He was an Alpha company. So what happened is the NVA had 3 battalions there. They had one on the command post was on the hill. Then they had another battalion that maneuvered behind Alpha company and came up and overran Alpha, forcing most of the Alpha survivors up where C and Bravo were. Okay, and they lost all the officers. Then that night was what they claimed was the worst friendly fire accident in Vietnam. And by the way, there's no such thing as friendly fire. None of it's friendly. Where, a 500-pound bomb went down, absolutely hit dead center where they had collected all the wounded, killing over 45 of them. And it also destroyed, it's just the morale and everything. It was just evidently a horrendous thing. We knew they had problems. We didn't know how badly shape they were in. But that's basically what happened. So that happened on the 19th. We went up on the 20th, but we didn't get there till late. And we weren't of much value, to be quite honest to them. When we went up the hill, that's the first time is, you used to seeing some bodies like we were encountering, and all of a sudden we realized, holy shit, most of these are Americans. And that was really a horrible thought. Okay. So we go up the hill. Bravo Company got there before we did, but it was dark. So they said, just lay low, because it was dark, couldn't see anything. First light, they started mortaring us, and that, I will say, was, other than getting hit, was the worst experience I've ever had. People say, were you scared on 8:30? No, my adrenaline was pumping. The morning of 8/75, yeah, because they knew our positions, and the other battalion was weapons from another hill were firing mortars into our positions. We weren't dug in because we had just gotten there the night, so we're laying on the ground, or where they're like mortar fire and rocket fire had done some holes, and they just walked the rounds right across us, so you could hear the rounds. You could hear thump, thump, thump of them firing the mortar rounds, and you knew they're coming in, and you could hear them hit, and you said, "Oh shit, that's pretty far away. I'm okay." And then they'd walk as they're walking the rounds across the perimeter. They're getting closer and closer, and the next one's either going to kill you, and then if it hits on the other side of you, thank God they didn't get me this time. And you can't do a thing. You just think you're going to fucking die. I mean, that's that, and it just, I don't know how long it lasted, but they would just crisscross the mortar rounds. It was, horrible. Then it would stop. And then I heard, I was at that time when I came back from the hospital, I had been first platoon leader, and then they made me as a quote, I was the older lieutenant then, weapons platoon leader. And the perimeter, the way we had formed it, a lot of the mortar rounds had hit in first platoon area and had wounded the platoon leader. So Alan Phillips became the S3, and Captain Muldoon was in charge. He was good. And he said, hey, can take over first platoon. We're going to assault the hill later. I said, yeah, I'll do it. It's my platoon. I knew the men. I said, yeah, I want to do it. So we got ready for the assault. And I knew that Bravo Company was going up, so they wanted us to maneuver kind of to the left flank of the hill and come up a ridge line. And I said, okay. So we start maneuvering around the ridge line. We got hit with mortar fire again. And we bunkered down, and they said, oh, we're going to delay the attack. We want to make sure we're going to soften it up with some airstrikes. And they did, and Jesus, that stuff was scary as hell. Because, I mean, as the rounds had hit were close enough that it would lift you off the ground. So they're just blowing the crap out of the hillside. And it isn't that far, it's not like way away. You're close enough to it. So finally they said, okay, let's, it stops, time to go up the hill. So I put the men on line. We start going up the hill. And, you always hear, oh, you're going to charge and yell, all this stuff, airborne kill and all that. We're quiet. No one's saying it. No one wants to be the first to be found out, coming up the hill. And then there's starting to be some weapons fire at us. Not so much at me, but I think they hit Bravo Company first. I think that woke them up. And we were moving pretty well. I was charging the hill. And I think after they opened up Bravo, where their bunkers were, they had they're going to put a protective ring of fire down around it. And then they just opened up. And that's what got me. I know at least 3 mortar rounds hit right around me. Just wham, because there were 2 guys killed right about 15 meters from me. They were blown up. Men to my left were also hit. And I lost, we had, I think, 8 killed just in that weapons fire, mortar rounds that came in. And then I thought I was dead. They got me good, you know. I mean, I knew it. I looked down and I could see my intestines. I knew my left arm was basically gone. It didn't hurt, but my stomach did though. I looked like raw hamburger and I had been split open. And I said, oh shit. So Bob Farron, the one you talked to, he's actually the one, he got hit too. And I didn't realize how badly. I just remember him holding an arm, and he had been on my left, and he said, I'll go see what I can, you know, what can I do for you, Lieutenant? He looked at me, and he goes, I can remember saying, oh shit. Yeah. He said, I'll go down, so he said, I'll go see what I can do. And he left. I don't know what happened to Sergeant Terrasas. I have no idea whatever happened to him. I don't know, my RTO, he got hit in the head. It was, since I had not been with 1st Platoon, I didn't know who the kid was. But he was crying behind me. And laid there for hours. Because we attacked at 3 in the afternoon. It was dark before they got to me. So, you know, I thought I'd bleed out. That's why my thought was I'd bleed to death. Because I saw blood pumping out of my thigh like a fountain. Ooh, this isn't good. Finally, they got to me. Put me on a litter, dragged me back down the hill, rolled off once off the litter, started rolling down the hill. I can remember them. I can still remember them grasping my mouth to quiet me down because they're North Vietnamese were all around us. They said, Lieutenant, don't go. I said, well, God damn it, it hurts. And got me back to a collection point. Medic, doctor, his name was Dr. Grosso, came up, checked on me. They couldn't do anything. They were out of medical supplies. They got I think 1 unit. Did I get any saline or not? I didn't get any blood. They didn't have anything.
Were you losing consciousness at this point?
Yeah, I was conscious. Yeah. I didn't want to be.
I bet.
I really didn't. And then our FO Billy Atkins came with me. He said, you'll make it. I'm going to make sure we get you on a chopper out of here in the morning. And they did. They got me out of first thing.
So you survived how long before actually getting to a place where they could work on you?
16 hours.
Wow. And no shock?
Nothing. No morphine, no blood. Just. And then when I got there, I thought, the first evacuation was fine. They did what they could. Oh, you're going to be fine, you're going to be fine. And then, oh, son of a bitch, they're giving me the last rites. This isn't good. I said, hey, no. I said, and then they were flying me to Quinh Nhan, main hospital there, and something happened because I felt like I knew that nauseous, and they panicked. I could tell. They pumped some more blood in me, and then after that, there was a long hospitalization.
So, what were the extent of your injuries?
I'm 100% VA disabled, 80% from the Army. Lots of use left arm, partial loss of limited mobility in my left leg. I lost quite a bit of flesh there. I can't jump. I have no muscle in my right thigh or left thigh. Had a lot of my flesh blown out of my right hip, and I had all my intestines were perforated. So.
And what was your recovery time?
Forever. I was at Walter Reed until I retired in '68.
So over a year.
Over a year.
Now, throughout that year, how many operations did you have?
I think about 10.
And I mean, you had limited mobility throughout that time.
Yes.
What keeps you going when you're in the hospital like that?
Walter Reed was, I hate to say, a great experience. it was called Ward 1, okay, we called it the Snake Pit. Everyone there was not in good shape, but some real characters, some just crazy ass people, okay, and they were just great to be with.
Fellow vets.
Yeah. They're one. In fact, he passed away as a colonel. Called him Dirty Jack Lawton. Dirty Jack was crazy. I mean, his injuries were extensive. He said, "Oh, I'm going to go back to Vietnam. I got to do this." He did. I don't know how he did it. He ended up going to 75th Rangers after he'd been like 2 tours with the 101st.
I feel like I've heard that name.
Yeah, Dirty Jack Lawton. Yeah, look him up.
Did he go?
He got kicked out of West Point as when he was young.
Was he an amputee or a partial amputee?
No, but I will tell you my favorite Dirty Jack Lawton story. This is true. Walter Reed. Well, now they've changed it, but the old facility, main hospital grounds. Okay, and then over a couple hundred meters away was the Walter Reed Institute of Nursing. We called them raindrops, the student nurses. And there was an officers club up the hill from the hospital, okay? We would go up to the officers club. Mostly, at that time I could walk a little bit. Others, we'd just take them up in our wheelchairs and get drunk. Really drunk. So, once we were up there, and then we'd call the ambulance to pick us up and bring us back. So anyway, there was a major, what's his name? Major, not Hobson, he was my doctor. He had double amputee in a wheelchair. And Jack Lawton says, "Oh, we're not going to call an ambulance. I'm going to get you home. We're going to ride you back down the hill, down to the hospital." So Lawton gets behind this guy, and they're going down the hill towards the hospital, and of course they flip. And they end up in a big giant bush, laying there. And they're both drunk and also disabled. And some poor raindrop was going to night shift, walking down this pathway. And they go, "Psst, psst." Then she looks over, there's 2 guys laying in this bush, one without legs. And they, "Have you seen a wheelchair?" And she went screaming off. Oh, my favorite one that I did was, became Senator of Georgia, Max Cleveland, was a triple amputee. So we're down in Ward 1, he's the triple, and my job that morning was to take Max in to get showers. So I roll him into the shower, make sure he's got his towel dry off, roll you back to your bed. So we do that, right? I go, "You know what? Max, we ought to hear he's butt naked. Have you ever been to the main floor of the hospital?" No. "Oh yeah, let's go." So he can't do a thing. He's a triple amputee. So I'm wheeling him we're on one level, and the next floor up is the main level for the hospital where the entranceway is. "Let's just go up this elevator here." Put him up, and I said, "Let's wheel you down." And see what happens. Oh, he was not happy.
So would you say that spending time with other guys in similar situations,
great.
Laughing,
oh yeah,
that's what got
there was
you through it?
a guy who actually had been Naval Academy, he then got commissioned in the Army. Johnstone was his name. He really got fucked up, excuse my English. He had lost half of his face, and he was like one half of his body was basically gone. Well, he decided he was going to go home for Thanksgiving driving. Well, how are you going to do it? He says, "That's okay." He had another guy whose injuries were on the other side of their body. So one worked the wheel, one worked the pedals, one what was to the right and what was to the left. Jesus Christ. You know?
Did they make it?
Yeah. I said, there's no way anyone should be on the road with you guys. Oh.
But you would say that time in your life keep it from
yes, to do it. Yeah. It really helped. You know, we'd go. People would have time off. Let's go to Ocean City, Maryland, where the beach is, right? You know, okay, make sure you take your legs off when you get there, or pop an eye out.
So
Dirty Jack Lawton once he was going to some program. The woman goes, "Oh, was that an accident?" He goes, "No, it was an intentional."
So, if there was one thing that you would say you learned from your service, your entire time in the service, what would you say the most important thing that you took home was, as far as something you
from my point of view, growing up in a fairly safe, secure neighborhood, well-to-do, but not well, better than average, to meet all the characters I met was probably the best experience. I had men in my platoon that one was a member of Hell's Angels. I had 2 men that were there because their choice was going to prison or going in service. They're good men. I mean, I always joke, I loved them like brothers, but I wouldn't let any of them within 100 meters of my sister. I wouldn't. I mean, really not. A lot of them were just kind of crazy, but they're good men. So those characters, I would never have encountered anywhere else.
And if you could go back in time today and rethink your decision to join, would you have done that?
Probably. I would have ducked, but
you would still explain that. I want to hear.
I don't wish my experience on anybody, but I also wouldn't trade it for anything. I mean, no, I don't like being injured. I've been years now, so I'm just used to it. You know, and it's part of my history. You know, I worked for many years. It was McDonnell Douglas at Health Information Group, and we did all these major contracts. We did all these bids, and the company was an automation company called McAuto. You can look up McAuto now; you won't find anything about them. And that's where I spent most of my life, okay? Yet I can remember intimate parts about Vietnam. If you ask me what I did for my birthday 5 years ago, I haven't a clue. Ask me what I did in 1967, I remember as well as any other birthday I've ever had. You know, it just sticks with you. See, people always ask, "Oh, tell me about combat." No, I remember being exhausted and being cold and the leeches more than I do anything else.
Was there anything you enjoyed about being in there?
Not much.
No. Besides the guys?
Yeah. Like I said, the biggest problem is it left me cold.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no humor. I remember not laughing. You know, that's really the shame. Is, you know, in college you're drinking and you're laughing and you're having fun. Everything's serious. You know, it's just serious. I mean, it really is. You know.
And if there's anything else that you could say to Myron Beach if you had the chance again, what would you tell him?
He was a hell of a good soldier. The best, absolutely the best. People ask me, you know, "Oh, what could we have done? Would we have ever won the war?" And my answer is no. And the reason for that is, I don't care what technology you have, what army you have. The strength of any military is in the NCO Corps. That's it. When I was in Vietnam, we had Sergeant Beach, the tours we've talked about, but all the other platoon sergeants were that way. I was talking to a friend from the herd who was there in '70, and he, good guy, and he really did a good job, but he will tell you he was a shake and bake. 90-day wonder out of sergeant school. No experience whatsoever, not like these guys had. And so you think how that NCO, how important that sergeant is to the unit's performance, and that's what I think where the breakdown was, to be quite honest. They lost all that experience. Guy said, hell, after another tour, I'm not going back, or either that or they're killed or wounded.